And let me tell you something. I don't know if any of you have had the experience of, I doubt it, because all those airliners are gone pretty much. A 3-pilot airplane or 3-position airplane, captain, first officer, flight engineer, being a first officer on one of those types of airplanes, and I got to fly 2 of them, the 727 and the L-1011, is like the best job in the world. I mean, we talk about it already, being an airline pilot is the best job in the world, but being a first officer on a 3-man crew is like, you are pretty much retired. You're just flying around to the next party. You don't do walk-arounds. You don't run checklist. I think we ran one checklist, like the pre-flight checklist. Other than that, that's it. You fly a leg, and then you talk on the radio the other leg. You fly a leg, you talk on the. That's it. You didn't have any responsibility. The captain had all the responsibility. In the simulator, and we know, if you've been in the simulator, you know that bad things happen in the simulator. And back in the day, I mean, it used to be multiple emergencies that was common, and things were just, nowadays it's much more realistic and not crazy like it used to be. But so as a first officer, something goes wrong, it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden the captain looks over at me and goes, "Hey, Jeff, set me up for a 15-mile final at this airport, blah, 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 this speed, blah, blah, blah." And then they go, "Okay, you have the airplane and the radios." And the captain and the flight engineer are just like, pieces of paper flying and screaming and crying. And I'm just sitting there going, sucks to be those guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this very, very special episode. It's very hard to start, and actually, I should find a way to start in a very smooth way and with a very nice voice, something that reminds you of the Airline Pilot Guy show. Anyways, just a first shout out to our supporters back in Brazil. Realizar, Escola de Aviação Civil. If you want to do your licenses, go there to Realizar to start your flying career. And of course, Hangar 33, our men's brand for men apparel, and should go and visit their store in Jaraguá do Sul and the hangar in Blumenau. And of course, Farol de Pouso, your solution for your online courses, the best and the first online aviation school in Brazil. We have Henrique and Pigato and Caio, and we have Captain Jeff on board, and it's a pleasure. Jeff, welcome to Farol de Pouso.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm so thrilled to be on your show.
I love coffee.
I love tea. I love the APG community. That's what you wanted me to be here for, right? To sing? Okay. All right.
Exactly. So, well, the first note that I have, it's a very big thank you note, because you have been helping the Brazilian community to become better pilots, to speak better English, and most especially you helped a lot of us to expatriate. Did you know that?
Well, I'm learning that this morning on our pre-recording interviews. I apparently am encouraging people to do whatever they need to do to get out there and get started in this beautiful world of aviation.
Absolutely. Well, especially on behalf of Guilherme Zimmerman, the other Guy, and myself, we started listening to APG back in 2014, and every time that we went out for running and jogging and trying to lose a couple of extra pounds, I would say, we were listening to APG, Miami Rick, and we learned a lot, and it helped us a lot. So yeah, thanks for that, and congratulations for having an amazing show.
Thank you.
Good. So today you're not in a hotel, because normally you would record, we are in this hotel, blah, this is the room, which is a studio. I can see you have a nice keyboard in the back, same as I do here. So tell us a little bit, where are you at the moment?
Okay, well, I am in an apartment in Roswell, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta, on the north side of Atlanta. Some people have heard of Roswell. Some people have heard of Alpharetta, which is an unusual name. And that's kind of all the same kind of coast cities up here on the north side. Really nice place. I've lived in Roswell for probably 22 years or so. And just recently went through a divorce. And so now I'm by myself here in an apartment, a little tiny 1-bedroom studio kind of an apartment. And I work for Acme Airlines. It's a very large legacy global airline that's based here in Atlanta. And so that's where I am. In this apartment, what you're looking at is I'm actually sitting at the place where it's like a kitchen island, I think. I don't know if you have those in your kitchens there. Yeah. And look, you're sitting there too, huh? Okay. And so behind me is just, so I'm making a transition. I don't know, I don't want to take up too much time talking about this, but I'm getting very close to the end of my career, and my next piece of equipment is not an airplane, but it's an RV, a recreational vehicle, or a motorhome or motor coach, or whatever you want to call it, which is going to be a lot smaller than this place here. So I'm kind of making the transition from a very large house to a very small apartment to a tiny house on wheels coming up spring of next year.
Jeff, here you can take whatever time you want to explain and to enlighten in every single way that you wish. Like, as we say, like we listen to your show, but here again is your show. So you can go meandering through every water that you feel like.
Okay, well,
and you won't have Liz on your ear talking to you to move to the next topic here. So
I know. Well,
it's all good.
Now, you know what is tough is I get so used to having Liz, my producer, in my ear on a back channel telling me things, and sometimes I'll be grasping for the correct word, and she'll be just saying stuff in my ear, and I'm going, yeah, that's it. That's the word I'm looking for. And it's kind of back or out in real life, I sometimes am waiting for her to give me the word to use. Of course, she's not there in real life. She's not always in my ear. But yeah, it's kind of scary to be on this show, and I don't have my Liz in my ear telling me what to say, or making some kind of a snarky, sarcastic comment, which I think she likes to do that just to kind of throw me off at times. But anyway, so getting back to my background here, yes, my digital piano. I had a beautiful professional upright piano, Kawai, that was in my house of many years. I mean, I had it for. We bought the piano like our first year of marriage back in 1982. So it had the piano for a very long, beautiful piano, beautiful piece of beautiful instrument. But I couldn't put it in my upcoming motorhome. You know, it's just not enough room for a very heavy piano. So I gave it to a very close friend at our at the church that I sing. Asked if anybody there would, you know, like this beautiful musical instrument, and so it's in a nice home. But I missed, you know, playing, and so I got this digital piano, Kawai, just to kind of. It's just nice, as you probably know, Felix, to sit down and just play.
Relief valve and be happy, right?
Yeah, right.
So let's go for like the first question. So it's always good to talk about you know, things we know, and maybe just the wife and ex-wife, they know better who we are. But just jokes apart, if whenever you like meet like a group of young pilots or aviation enthusiasts, and they have no idea who you are, they never even heard about APG, and they ask you, okay, but yeah, tell us a little bit about you, your experience, you know, gray hair, mustache, you look like a real pilot, so tell us a little bit about that. And then what do you answer them?
Okay. So it's like, tell us about you. We've never heard of you. Okay, I get it. Well, as you're looking, if you see the picture of me with my gray hair, I haven't always had gray hair. I used to have nice dark, you know, hair like you have.
We're getting there. Pigato, not really.
But hold on, you got hair.
Okay, well, you know, you have a beautiful, what do they call that? Well, I don't want to say anything wrong, but I know family show. But anyway, your head looks beautiful, Guy.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm not bald. I'm aerodynamic.
There you go. If I shaved all my hair off, I would look hideous. So there's a reason why God gave me some hair to cover up this horrible looking skull of mine. Anyway, so let's see. From a very young child, I grew up in Southern California, born in Long Beach, and then lived in most of my time in Southern California, in Los Alamitos, Seal Beach, Huntington Beach. That in the Orange County, where Orange County and Los Angeles County kind of meet. And when I was 13, the family moved from there to Mobile, Alabama, on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. And that's where I went through junior high and high school. But even when I was a little kid out in California, I still remember, like having like little tiny airplane die-cast models. And I still have a very clear memory of just in my backyard, just flying around with the model in my hand and just imagining that someday I'm going to be a pilot and I'm going to be flying an airplane up in the sky. And then many trips to the Los Angeles International Airport to, take family or pick them up from their trips and whatever, and a lot of exposure to that and just and I think that all of you can relate to this. The smell of burnt jet fuel is just intoxicating to me. Just such a beautiful smell, and just being in that environment and watching all these people. I'm imagining all the amazing places they're going throughout the world, and I'm seeing these pilots and flight attendant crews, with their actually back then they were carrying their suitcases. They didn't have wheels on their roller bags, and just the whole atmosphere. It just seemed so exotic to me to live in that world and fly these beautiful machines. And so that even from a very young age, I knew that I didn't want to be an Air Force fighter pilot. I wanted to fly these big airliners. And so that was, I was decided when I was, I don't know, I wasn't even 10 years old, maybe, something between 5 and 10 years old. I decided this is what I'm going to do for a living. And it's such a blessing, I think, and I think you would agree, that when there's so many people out there in this world today that really they don't really know what they want to do. And some never really find exactly what it is they want to do for their job. And it's such a relief for me because I always knew, I'm going to be a pilot. That's what I'm going to do. And so easy. I don't have to worry about what I'm going to do. And and I knew really very little about the job itself and compensation for the job and that kind of thing. I just knew I wanted to live in this world and fly these big airplanes. So when I was in middle school and high school, I from a very early age, I started taking piano lessons. Maybe I was 5, 6 years old. My mother was a musician. She started teaching me, and then I went to a regular piano teacher. And then in, I think, 5th grade, I started playing the trumpet. And so throughout junior high and high school, playing the trumpet became that music was a very, very big thing in my life. And as well as, flying was always there. That's what I'm going to do for my job. And this music thing is pretty cool. But then there was a certain point where I thought I might actually go into music for a living. But then I quickly learned when I got older that I started looking at compensation, how much money you make, salary, that kind of thing and as much as I wanted to be a studio musician, and make lots of money and be with all the cool musicians, I realized that probably wasn't going to work. I'd probably be a band director, which is a wonderful job, but it doesn't pay a lot. And so if I wanted to fly airplanes, I'd have to have some money. As you know, it's not a cheap endeavor, especially for general aviation, private flying. And so I thought, well, wait. So if I fly airplanes for my job, I could also do my passion of music on the side in my spare time. So that's what I decided to do. So I went off to college and what at the time back in the was this mid to late 70s? I'm an old guy. The people that were being hired by the major U.S. airlines were mostly people that were in the military, had military training. And I knew nothing about the military. I didn't come from a military family. I had an idea that I would be living in the barracks and eating in mess halls and living in tents. I didn't know what flying in the military involved. And so I thought, nope, I don't want to do that. I guess I'll do something else. And so I ended up going into engineering. I went to Georgia Tech my freshman year and then went over to Auburn University the rest of my time. And after a couple of years of very intense engineering, electrical engineering at Auburn, I realized, number one, I'm not smart enough to do this. Number two, I can't picture myself being an engineer for a living. But I can still picture myself up in that airplane flying passengers all around the world. And so I thought, you know what? Maybe going into the military is not such a bad thing. I'll just suck it up and do whatever I have to do and treat that as my master's degree, my doctorate degree to get whatever training I need to get hired by a major U.S. airline. So that's what I did. So I graduated from Auburn University with a degree. So I switched from engineering to aviation management, which was my grades got much better. Courses weren't as difficult. It was still in the School of Engineering, but it was kind of engineering light kind of study. So I switched to aviation management. My grades went up, and I started studying things that I was interested in, and graduated in 1981. And before I did, I went. A lot of the courses that I was taking in aviation management were filled with people who were in the Air Force and Navy ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps, I think is what it stands for. So I looked into that, but they had pilot slots, and then the pilot slot got taken away from them, and then they got it back, and then they got it, and I thought, I don't want to do this commitment to ROTC and not know for sure that I'm going to have a pilot slot, because that's the only reason why I want to go into the military is get that, to be a pilot. And so I went over to a recruiter in the nearby town of Opelika, and I asked the recruiter, what do I need to do to go to officer training school after I graduate as a pilot candidate? And so he told me all the things I needed to do, and I took the tests, and he called me back a few weeks later and said, hey, good news. You did really well on the tests, and said you did really well on the navigator test. And so we're thinking we'll submit your application as a pilot or a navigator. And I'm thinking, I don't know. He goes, don't worry. He says, if you're accepted as a navigator, it's really easy to go from navigator to pilot in the Air Force. Which is not true, by the way, but he's a recruiter, and he has these quotas that they have to maintain. But something didn't sound right about it. So I said, no, just submit me as a pilot candidate. And so he did, and got the results back a couple of weeks later, and they said, yes, we accept you as a pilot candidate in the Air Force. Now, this time I'd had maybe not even 5 hours in my logbook. I worked, when I was in high school, I worked at the Mobile Air Center, a fixed base operator, FBO. I don't know if you guys have that kind of thing down in Brazil. But I was a lineman I think they called us line boys back then. But I was out there, parking airplanes and stacking the hangar, moving airplanes around, fueling them, putting oil in them, and that kind of thing. Just hanging around an airport and hanging around pilots and people that are, surrounded, this whole aviation world, and got to talk to people and just hang out and smell that jet fuel and everything else being burnt. So one of my fellow linemen was a CFI. So every now and then we'd go up in the FBO Cessna 150 or 152 and log a couple of hours. He'd give me flight instruction, but it really, it was just mostly having fun. So when I realized I was going to go in the Air Force and let the Air Force train me, I just stopped. I think, well, I'm just wasting my money, paying somebody for flying lessons. I'm going to be trained by the U.S. Air Force. So I stopped doing that. So when I got to officer training school in San Antonio, after 2 weeks after I graduated from Auburn, this is back in August, September of 1981, I had to go through something called flight screening program because I didn't have a private certificate. So they wanted to make sure before they spent a heck of a lot of money on me that I was going to be capable of actually flying an airplane. And so we did this 3-week course where I was flying basically the Air Force version of a Cessna 172. And they try to simulate undergraduate pilot training in the real Air Force, a lot of pressure, and everything happening very quickly. And then they basically just take you to solo. And then once you've done your solo ride, they go, okay, you're good. You're going to be okay in UPT, undergraduate pilot training. So then I learned how to be an officer for the next 3 months. And then I went to pilot training after I graduated and got my butter bars, my second lieutenant rank, and started flying for real in jets, and started with the T-37, the basic trainer side by side. It's a great airplane, not a super fast, super quiet, super slick airplane, but it's perfect for what it's designed for. It's teaching people how to fly jets and do aerobatics and formation and all kinds of that kind of flying. And then once you make it through that first part of the training, I say maybe 4 or 5 months later, then you graduate to the more advanced trainer, which is a T-38 Talon, which is a supersonic trainer. And that was a kick in the pants, literally. The afterburners on it are very impressive. That thing is just a little rocket. And so the rest of my time in undergraduate pilot training was spent in the T-38. And so the whole thing from when I started to when I ended is about a year long, very intense, high pressure training. And then I ended up getting to the top 10% of my class, which is, they call it distinguished graduate. And if you're a distinguished graduate, you can pick what you want to fly. Now, at that time, I thought that to get into the airlines, which is my goal, I had to fly big airplanes, crew airplanes. And I thought the idea of flying around the world would be, just super exciting. So I wanted to fly the C-141 Starlifter. It's a Lockheed high wing, 4-engine. It's like a little, if you know what a C-5 looks like, the C-141 is like a smaller version of the C-5. Something between, the C-17 is our current military transport, and along with the C-5. But it's a little bit smaller than the C-17 too, in certain dimensions. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I thought I was coming back as an instructor pilot. Honestly, they were telling me that that's what was going to happen after I graduated, and but that was before they knew that I was a distinguished graduate and I would get whatever I wanted to get, or whatever assignment I wanted. Now, a lot of people say, "Well, Jeff, you could have flown the F-15, the F-16, the A-10, the F-4, reconnaissance." RF-4, I think they called it. That's just like some of the fast jets that were available to me. And if I had chosen one of those, I would have gotten it because, again, I was a distinguished graduate. I could have anything I wanted. But again, I still wanted to fly that heavy airplane and do the airline-ish kind of flying and explore the world. So that's what I ended up doing, and did that for a couple of years. And then I got a letter that said, "Hey, Jeff, we're considering you to come back as an instructor pilot in the Air Training Command." And I went, no. Again, I'm thinking, no, I got to have this heavy time. I got to log all these hours in this big airplane to get hired by the airlines. And now this is going to completely just destroy my career, because now I'm going to be flying a little trainer airplane, 1.3 hours at a time. and it's not going to be worth anything to the airlines. They're going to look at that and go, you're not qualified. Well, I was completely wrong about that. What most of the airlines, if not all, look at from military pilots is not really what they flew. It's what their status was in that airplane. If they were instructor pilots or evaluator pilots or both, they really look at that time very, very highly. And so it didn't matter that I went from a big, transport airplane to a small, jet trainer. It was all good in the eyes of Acme Airlines, which is the virtual or fake airline that I say I fly for. So I did my initial commitment. So after I got my wings, it was 6 years commitment. And then now it's, 10 or 11 years after you get your wings. So it's quite more commitment nowadays to go that military route, as long as you're in the active duty. So I ended up applying for several airlines in my last year or so when I was in the Air Force, and I interviewed with all the big ones. But the one that I really wanted was Acme, and so when I went through the interview at Acme and they called me back and said, we're offering you employment. I basically called back all the other airlines that I was in maybe the second phase or third phase of the interview process and said, thanks, but no thanks. I got hired by Acme, and that's what I want.
I have two questions going back there before we go into the airline experience, Jeff. So one is like literally oriented for those military pilots now, especially in the Brazilian folks that are willing to go for the airline business later on in their careers. It's like, how did you find the difference between flying the jet and then like coming from the mentor jets to the crew environment on a bigger jet transport military? Like, how was it this for you? Like the difference between being like alone or two pilots operation to a bigger crew? That's the first question. And then the second question is just like, what was one of the remarkable trips that you did flying the transport in the military?
Okay. Good questions. Thanks. So the transition from going in the, and I was just thinking about that, you said solo. The last time I flew an airplane solo was when I was in pilot training back in 1980, I guess the very beginning of 1983. That was the last time I was ever trusted to fly an airplane by myself, I guess.
None of these guys were born.
What's that?
None of these guys here were born. I was 1 year old.
I know. So I told you I was old. I was born in 1958. Wow. Yeah, I know. Even that sounds really, really ancient to me, even. And as I was mentioning before we started the show, I'm very close to retirement. Age 65 is happening this year in December. So I'm at the twilight of my career right now, and it's all I'm hardly even flying anymore. I'm trying to transition to my next chapter of my life after I finish, flying in the airlines. Anyway, so what was it? Oh, the transition. So going from a little airplane, twin jet, especially the T-38. Most of the time, as I said, I was not solo. We did do a little bit of solo flying in that airplane, but mostly you're with an instructor pilot, and but it's not really a crew environment as what we think of now in a transport aircraft. But going to school on it, and maybe it's because for me it wasn't difficult because that's kind of what I envisioned my life was going to be after I got through all this training. So it was not, for me, it was just not a difficult thing. Working with other people in a crew was actually kind of second nature. So it was not an issue at all. Now I think that It might be more of an issue for pilots that maybe get one of the single-seater fighters, and they do that for many, many years, and they're so used to being, I'm it, and I don't have a crew to work with. I am the crew. I've heard from some friends of mine who flew fighters that it's a little bit of a not difficult, but it's something that takes some getting used to, working with other people, and you're not, the only one. But I think even for those people who flew fighters for many, many years, it's not a difficult thing. It's an easy, just like people say, well, it must be a really, really hard transition to go from the right seat to the left seat, because now, your hands, your left hand's on the stick and your right hand's on the, and I think, well, at first it feels a little odd, but then after a couple of sims, you're just used to it. Your brain has adapted to it, and it's no big deal. I think in a similar way, going from a single operation to now, there are people that have issues with making that transition to a crew aircraft, and in fact, we've even had people send us feedback on our show saying that they were having a difficulty in the simulator handling complicated emergency situations, working with somebody else, because they were so used to the environment of, I'm the only one that's in control of this airplane. So it's I have heard people that do have issues with it, but it wasn't a big deal for me. So that was the first thing. And then the other thing, the experiences in the C-141 were amazing. I was based in Northern California at Travis Air Force Base, and I'd say at least 75% of our trips originated heading west into the Pacific, and almost every first flight was going to go from Travis to Hickam Air Base, which is Honolulu International Airport, Honolulu, Hawaii. And I still remember my first trip, making that crossing to Hawaii and landing, and then going to the, I think it was called billeting, where you go and see if you can get a room at the officers' quarters at the base. And they said, I'm sorry, we don't have any availability for your whole crew. So here's some vouchers, and there's the Air Force van, and you guys drive to Waikiki Beach, and you're going to stay at the Outrigger Hotel in Waikiki. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this really happening? I'm in Hawaii. I'm going to stay in Waikiki Beach. And then we got to the hotel and we're checking in, and my aircraft commander looked over at me, brand new co-pilot. Hey, Jeff, down at the beach in 15. And what? Yes, sir. And I'm out on the beach in Waikiki going, wow, this is more amazing than I thought I would ever experience. And they're paying me for this. They weren't paying me a heck of a lot, but they were paying me for this. And that's one of the things about the military training that it's been such a blessing for me. Well, several things about military training were a blessing. First of all, the actual training itself is unlike anything that you can possibly experience in this world. I'm just top-notch. Some of the situations you find yourself, I was flying in a T-38 four-ship aerobatics. We called it extended trail. And if you're like number 3 or number 4 and they're in a barrel roll, you're kind of going like, okay, how is this going to work out? How am I going to do this without hitting another airplane? It's just crazy stuff. So that's one thing about military training, and just like unusual attitudes in the airlines when they started introducing and really focusing on unusual attitude recoveries. If you have the military training, it's just like for the very first flight you take when you're a brand new military student, you go out there and you're practicing unusual attitudes and how to get out of it. So, it's just unusual attitudes were not unusual in the type of training you get in the military, at least in my experience. But getting into the 141 and flying to all these places, so I said Hawaii, I'm on the beach in Waikiki. The next day we fly from there to Guam, and then another crew rest, and then from there, you could go all different places, but usually it was like the Philippines. Got to fly to the Singapore on the way to Diego Garcia, which is a little atoll out in the middle of the literally in the middle of the Indian Ocean, out in the middle of nowhere. I think it's a British-owned property, but the U.S. Air Force has a military base on it, and it's a joint U.S. and British thing. I think it's a British overseas territory is where this whole thing is located. Beautiful tropical island atoll. Flew to Oman a couple of times to support the whatever the number fleet is, like the 6th fleet or 7th. I can't remember what the number was, but just transporting supplies from Diego to Oman, and then they supply the fleet that was in that area, and then back to Diego Garcia. We got to go to all kinds of places in Asia, Japan, Thailand, Korea, and then and every now and then we get to go down to south of the equator, down to New Zealand and Australia, and one of the most interesting things, which just blew my mind, was Pango Pango, American Samoa. And now, honestly, this is one of the couple of times in my career that I thought people were really kind of pulling my leg and making something up. I'm a new guy. I don't really know that much about world geography. And on the way down to Australia, we're going to stop for fuel in Pango Pango. And it looks like Pago. So I thought, that looks like Pago to me. But for some reason, we pronounce it Pango Pango. And I said, so American Samoa, what is this? And so, it's an American territory. And I went, huh? Down in the South Pacific? I mean, not very far from Fiji and all these South Pacific paradises. And they said, yeah. And I went, okay. And I still wasn't sure that they weren't pulling my leg. I thought that maybe they were kidding around with me, but beautiful place. In fact, we ended up, I can't remember why now. I don't know if the airplane broke or if we ran out of crew rest, but we had to spend the night in Pango Pango at the Rainmaker Hotel, which is, I don't even think is there anymore, but was like the really nice, luxurious, tropical thatched roof hotel in this amazing tropical paradise. And I'm thinking, I can't believe, again, pinching myself, I can't believe I'm in this place. I would never have imagined kind of flying to a place like this. But anyway, so I got a whole bunch of different, I could go on for hours talking about some of the stories flying. And I only flew the airplane for a little over 2 years. And still have a lot of stories about places that I flew around the world. Some places that I want to go back to someday, and others that I'm thinking, man, I'm good. I don't want to ever go back there again. So it was a good experience. And then, as I said, I went back, flew as an instructor for the last 4 years of my military time, and then I got hired by my dream airline, and I've been with Acme for almost coming up on 35 years now.
Those are very good answers to that, Jeff. And of course, I was expecting to be as good as they were. And then, are you going to be able to close the 35-year mark before you retire?
Yeah, my anniversary date is December 15. And my birthday is the day after Christmas. So, yes.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I was just checking on Google Earth here. Where is Pango Pango? Where is it? Mm-hmm. So to the east side of Australia, same latitude, almost northbound to New Zealand, in the middle of nowhere, close to nobody. Mm-hmm. And unbelievable that this is an American territory.
I know.
Yeah, it's literally, I have never heard about this place.
Well, see, the other thing that was interesting about, I said that was one of the times in my career where I thought people were just joking around with me. When I was flying the 141, very early on, there was something happening in the world. In 1983, the Grenada, the island of Grenada, there was a coup, and there was what do they call that? Some type of a armed conflict or contingency operation, I think is what it was termed as to us active duty people. And we were, and also at the same time, Beirut bombing. There was a big, the barracks in Beirut, U.S. soldiers, there was a big bomb and killed a bunch of people. And so that was all happening simultaneously. And our base was on, I think they called it Alpha Alert. And basically you had to be ready to go at a moment's notice, go to the squadron, get ready to go, get in the airplane and then go. And so they called us up, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night and said, hey, we need you to come in. We got a mission and it's confidential. And so I knew that I was either going to go to Beirut or I'm going to go down to Grenada. And so the only thing I could do to kind of give my wife, I was a newlywed at the time, any kind of an idea where I was headed was I called her up and said, I'm heading south. That's the only thing I could say. I thought that was, something that was not completely confidential. And we got
talking about this in the Caribbean, right?
Yes. It's near Barbados.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, no problem. And so we went to Langley Air Force Base, got this briefing, and or was it Pope Air Force Base? Anyway, it was I think it may have been for Pope Air Force Base, which is right next to the big place where they have the 82nd Airborne. And we got this briefing, and they were showing us these weapons and shoulder-launched ground-to-air missiles and that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I thought the airplane that I'm flying is strategic airlift, not tactical airlift. Like, you mean that people could be like shooting missiles at us? What am I doing here? Anyway, we were heading down from there, the U.S., down toward Grenada, and I was looking at our paper, charts. We had paper back then, not these iPads, and which I love, by the way. So I'm looking at this thing, and I'm looking at looks like the nation of Cuba, and then it says USN. QB Point, or not QB Point, USN Guantanamo Bay. And I'm thinking, USN, US Navy? We have a US base in Cuba? I thought, that can't be right. And I was almost embarrassed to ask the question. I said, and I'm a college educated person at this point, I should know something about US history, obviously, not much. I was never very good at history. And I said, so, hey, what's this here on the map? I said, we have a Navy base in Cuba? They go, oh yeah. I'm thinking, they must really still be kidding me. And nope, they were right. And I finally did some research and learned some history about why we had a U.S. Navy air station base there on Cuba, and ended up, and I have another story that you don't want to hear about, but I actually violated Cuban airspace when I was a young co-pilot flying the C-141. I wasn't even supposed to be flying the airplane. That was another reason why we got a little bit of trouble for that. I didn't know it at the time, but the aircraft commander was supposed to be the only pilot flying into that location, especially if they're landing in a certain direction, because you get very close to the line between the U.S. Navy base territory and the nation of Cuba, and apparently it's a kind of a big deal.
I'm sure after all these years, it's already sorted out. They won't bother you about it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can say that now. In fact, at my squadron, they were calling me the Cuban kid for a while. Yeah.
I found one of your sentences on the very beginning when you were talking about how to get your licenses or your pilot training in the military. I took note of one beautiful sentence you said. You said something about seeking guidance from the recruiter. And that's what most of our listeners and your listeners as well, they seek from us. They seek guidance. They seek from you guidance. They seek proper information on how to get where they want to be. And if Acme, which is an American airline based, it's I don't know if you guys are facing some sort of pilot shortage or not, but how was the screening process when you got hired? And if you can, or if you know how it is right now, and if you see some differences, and mostly how to get prepared for that.
Okay, so I'm not completely up to speed on what the current process is, but I think it's very similar to what I went through back in the late 80s. And I think it's still a 2-day interview process. I'm not sure if they've narrowed it down to 1 day. But and back in the day when I did it, we had to, get a typewriter because they didn't have computers. Personal computers, or if they did, it was in the very infancy. It wasn't like everybody had a computer. And believe it or not, for people who are listening, young people listening right now, they didn't even have cell phones. I mean, can you believe they didn't have phone? How in the world can you live your life without a cell phone? And now we all ask that, like, how did we live our lives without these? Of course, you guys are all very young, and so you probably grew up in this world of personal communications and everything else, but I didn't. So we actually had to get a typewriter, type out our resumes, and then we had to actually fold them up and put them in an envelope, which is a paper thing that you put other paper in and you seal it up and you put a stamp on it. Man, they probably don't even know what a stamp is.
What is a stamp?
It's like a little sticker.
I mean, I'm 31. I still know what a stamp is, and that's not because it's Brazil, but because I'm old enough to know about that.
The thing is, how do you explain what a typewriter is to a kid? It's basically a keyboard that prints at the same time you type.
Exactly.
That's what I said to my daughter.
And then if you make a mistake, it's not like you just can't hit backspace or delete or whatever. It's like you have to take this little liquid paper or whatever they call it, correction fluid, and take a little tiny brush. It's ancient. It's ancient technology, but it makes you really appreciate modern word processors for sure. Yeah. But now it's all, so I had to mail that in, and then they, mail back, and, you give them a little card that lets you know that they actually received your application and blah, blah, blah. And then they actually used, the telephone landlines to call you up and, invite you to come to an interview and that kind of thing. But now from what I understand, it's all online. They're it's like a third-party company that manages these things for several airlines, and you kind of maintain a digital resume or CV or whatever you want to call it. And then if you have the minimum requirements for whatever that airline requires, then they may call you up for an interview, and you go in. And as I said, for me, it was a 2-day thing. And I think the first day I think they split us up in 2 groups. The group that I was in, I think the first day we did like a battery of tests, like personality tests and what do they call it? IQ, intelligent quotient kind of tests. And then I think we talked with some personnel people. I don't remember which day it was, but on one of the days you do all that stuff, and then another day you go to the physical. They want to make sure that you don't have some kind of, horrible disease, and you're going to actually live for a number of years, so they get their money's worth out of you. And, they want to make sure that you're physically fit, including at the time, by the way, both in the Air Force and at the large airline based in Atlanta, Georgia, required uncorrected 20/20 vision. And now the Air Force and most of the military back then also required uncorrected 20/20 vision. I don't think that they do anymore. I'm not sure. People could correct me about that here in the U.S. But there were very few airlines that actually required, no glasses, 20/20 vision or better. And Acme was one of them. And I was so scared that my vision wasn't going to be good enough. But I passed the vision test. I think that was the second day. And so it was probably, and they also talked to a psychologist and they ask you questions, and people get really freaked out about the psychological exam. I think they have like a chair that is like, it rocks a little bit. I don't know if you've heard the folklore regarding the psychiatric examination with the desk where the psychologist is or psychiatrist, and there's a rocking chair, and people just freak out. Oh, am I supposed to rock or am I not supposed to rock? I'm thinking, don't think about it. Just sit down and talk to the guy. So many people, I think, eliminate themselves from these interviews, psychological interviews, by like overthinking everything and not focusing on just communicating with a fellow human being. And to me, it was just like having a conversation with you guys. It's just like, we're just shooting the ball. Well, tell me why do you want to fly for our, this company? It was not associated with Acme. And I explained why, and I was just completely honest and had a great time talking with this person. I guess certain personalities get in there, like when they're talking or being interviewed by somebody, they try to think, okay, this is what I should say for this answer. And my best advice that I can give to anybody is clear all that out of your head. Don't think about what it is that you're supposed to say. Just answer the question as if you're talking to somebody like I'm talking to you guys. Just have a conversation. And if you don't know the answer, because they'll ask you some technical questions. So they even asked me some geographical questions. So, hey, Jeff, I see that you flew the C-141 in the Air Force, and you flew a lot to Guam and the Philippines and, all these different places in the Pacific. So about where, as far as compared to the equator, where is, Guam? Like how many degrees north or south of the equator? And I don't remember if I got the answer correct or not. I know it's very close to the equator and that kind of thing, but you don't let it trip you up. You just kind of go, well, as far as I remember, I think this is the answer, but you don't try to bluff your way through or try to give an answer that you think that they're wanting you to say. Just give an honest answer. Be true to yourself. Answer the question honestly. And one of the easiest things for me at this airline interview was all the other airline interview. I'd been to maybe 3 other airlines, and I was in the various process of their interview process. Many of them had like 2 or 3 part interview processes. They would ask me the question, why do you want to fly for American Airlines? Why do you want to fly for United Air? Why do you, and I bend the truth a little bit, because this is, the airline I've always, but with Acme, I was so easy for me because it was a completely 100% honest. I've always wanted to fly for Acme Airlines. That's my goal. I just love everything. What do you like about it? And this is another thing, a piece of advice for people. If you're interviewing with a company, know something about the company. Know the history of the airline. Know where they started. Maybe some of the prominent people that started the airline. Know something about where they're based in the world. Just don't go in and, you'll go to a company these days and you'll ask a question like, hey, how long has this company been around? Where did it start? And most employees of most companies out there go, I don't know. It's just down the street and I needed a job, But and also kind of turn the tables a little bit too. If they give you the opportunity when they're asking you questions, ask them questions as well. I think that's another technique that kind of shows that you have an interest in what you're doing and you have an interest in working for that company. So just a couple things off the top of my head that I think that might be helpful for people that are interviewing with companies. But know something about the company. Just don't go in there and just be completely ignorant. That's not good. Not a good look, in my opinion.
Especially nowadays that you have the advantage of technology. Like you can just go to the company website and then find their history over there. Like you have their whole history. And I think that back in the 80s, that was not quite straightforward. You had to do some research, some digging in order to find the information, right?
Yes. Yeah. Nowadays, we have like so much knowledge, so much information in our little tiny phone in our hand. And there's no excuse for not knowing everything there is to know. Well, not everything, but know something about the company that you're interviewing with. As you said, back in the day, you'd have to go and you'd have to look up information in the encyclopedia, go to the library.
Encyclopedia.
I know.
What is that?
And then library have books, these things that are like have paper in them and hard covers in the front and back, and and also back then I was subscribed to a magazine called the Future Airline Pilots of America, I think FAPA. I think they've changed what that stands for many times over the years. I think it's like Future Airline Professionals of America or something like that. I don't know. But the thing that was really great about this is that each magazine every month would have like a featured airline, and you could read all about, they did the work for you. All you had to just read it, and know where they started and something about the company and where they're based and that kind of thing, where they fly. But the best part about being with FAPA in that little magazine that they'd send us every month, and this is when I was in the latter years of my military career, was that in the back they'd break down all the airlines training classes, like how many people were in the class, and then what their qualifications were, like what was the average number of hours, what kind of ratings did they have. When I was going through, I looked at Acme's classes, and about 50% were had ATP, like full airline transport pilot certificates or licenses, and half of them had the written examination, but only had commercial ratings. And back then, it wasn't cheap, and it's not like it is today where it's really expensive. But back then, I think it was maybe somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000 to go and get the ATP, full ATP. I mean, guys, when I got my commercial single engine rating, I think I paid $75 to the examiner. Here, I've heard stories now. It's like 10 times that or more to go through these examinations. Now I know it's been a while, inflation and everything else, but anyway. So I kind of made a calculated decision, and I'm thinking, well, if half of the people being hired have this kind of qualification, they only have commercial ratings, well, then I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to save my money and not spend it. And obviously that worked out. So I didn't have an airline transport pilot certificate until I checked out as a captain in the 727 after 12 years after I'd been hired by the company, because it wasn't a requirement back then. Of course, now we all know. I don't know if it's true for you in Brazil, probably is, but in the U.S., you have to even, put in an application and get, looked at by even a regional airline here. You have to have the airline transport pilot certificate in 1,500 hours, and because that's the minimum requirement in most cases for an ATP. So. Yeah, I tell people the military training was like, for my entire training, the amount of money that I paid out of my pocket was basically nothing. I mean, except for those first couple of flights that I flew with, and I'm not even sure if I paid my fellow worker at Mobile Air Center anything. Maybe, some beers or something. I don't know. I don't even think I was old enough to drink back then. Probably no beers. Anyway, but from day one, when I was in the U.S. military, I was getting paid. When I went through pilot training, they were paying me. And so again, blessings, are just huge that I hear about all the people now trying to get training and hours and experience and all the money that they have to, huge amounts of money. I'm not sure if I would be here in this airline world if I had to grow up in what we're experiencing nowadays, and the huge amounts of money required to get all this experience. Yeah, go ahead, Felix.
Yeah. Oh, no, just on a personal note, on being a pilot / musician or vice versa at the same time. Just wanted to tell a story real quick about Caio, one of our secretaries. Right, he works as the roadie. Like he gives this very nice musician in Brazil all the support. And then from that and a little bit of the money that he can get here at Farol de Pouso, he's paying his hours. And that's a hard job. It's like an endeavor. It's like an adventure. It's really difficult nowadays. For sure it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of, having to get loans for $100,000, $150,000 US dollars, maybe even more. Crazy things I've heard. And, you almost have to come from a family with immense wealth to be able to afford to get whatever is needed to get even looked at by the airlines, which is wrong. I'm hoping that it gets to the point where the airlines look down and say, you know what, we can't get enough people. We don't have people that have the qualifications to get hired by us. We're going to have to, at some point, start paying for all of this. And I think that's going to happen. I don't know when, but I think it's inevitable that they're going to have to put out the money or start their own training schools to get people where they need to be to fly an airliner safe. Now, I know over in various parts of the world outside the U.S., they have that, what is it called? The multi-crew.
MPL.
Yeah, the NPL.
Yeah, which is great. It's on the job training, right? It's I think it's a great system. And at least, although I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you still have to have, a certain level of ratings before you can even start those programs. And it's still a lot of money, right?
Yeah, but then normally those are company sponsored or state sponsored. So, okay. And it depends. Like we had Varig had this program in Brazil, which was based on the Lufthansa program. And like my batchmate here, he's from Bulgaria. When we first joined back in 2015, he was flying his airline in Bulgaria, but before that, he took this government-sponsored program, and then that's how he became a pilot there. And we see many others, like Bahraini first officers nowadays, even they go there, and they until the year, whatever, they had this country national cadet program, and then eventually they stopped. So it's a matter of like the demand and offers of whatever is happening in the country. We see that a lot in China and other Asian countries. So we could see that in America as well. However, nevertheless, I wanted to say that this is actually connected to the second topic that Pigato touched base on, which was the pilot shortage, and how there's also like what I wanted to ask is, how do you see these movements in American businesses? Because like I have some friends that I know that they were flying the regionals and now they're in the majors, or lots of friends that are actually coming from all over and joining the U.S. airlines. So how do you see that, and what would you tell them when you see like suddenly you're flying with the Brazilian first officer next to you and he just joined?
Well, we all start from nothing, and we all, through so many different ways, get our experience, our hours, and our ratings. Some of us pay huge amounts of money to do it, and it takes quite a bit of time. Others, like me, I didn't pay anything, and it was a time commitment. 7 years in the military before I was had the requirements to get, but I got to skip the whole regional thing because of the fact that at the time that I was hired back in the 80s, the majors looked at military experiences quite an advantage. It was a known quantity. They knew what they were going to get from military trained pilots, because in the U.S. military, and I'm sure it's true with most of the military flying around the world. You're really, to be a pilot, you have to be an officer. To be an officer, you have to have most required college education. You have ambition. You have, doing the things you need to do to get to where you need to go. But you learn a lot about leadership, and you're more than just somebody who can get in an airplane and move the stick around and the throttles and make a PA to the passengers and take off and land. You have the experience of leadership and having people working under you, and so it's a lot denser kind of experience. And so I think that the major legacy airlines here in the U.S. Really appreciated that kind of background. And hey, not only that, but this person can actually fly and do a good job of it. And so that back when I was hired, I think maybe 95%, very, very high percentage of the people that were getting hired by the major airlines were people with military experience. And that's why I finally decided, okay, if I need to do that, that's what I'll do to get where I want to go. Back then, I mean, it would have taken me a very long time to go through the civilian training pipeline. And I knew, even though I thought I knew a lot about this world of airline flying and seniority and everything else, I knew nothing really. But I did know that seniority was important, and getting to that major as soon as you could is an important thing. I'm not sure that I completely grasped the importance of seniority until I actually got some. I knew the theory of it, but as far as the practical understanding of it, not until, and I think maybe you all will agree with me, and I know you're flying for various airlines around the world that have different systems, not completely a seniority-based system, that kind of thing. But here in the U.S., the major airlines are all, seniority-based systems, and seniority is just, it's hard to describe. To have seniority is a very important thing. So I knew that I wanted to get to the major airlines as quickly as I could. And for me at the time, back in the 80s, that's the way to do it. You needed to go through the military. And so I'm wondering about what the original question was there. I've gotten so far off the track that I can't recall exactly what I'm supposed to know.
It was just like a general view on the movements that you could see in the U.S. If it's if you're facing a bit of a shortage, or how is it the expansion of the airlines, and how is to see all these new joiners and the expansion and all this.
If I may add, on the other end of people joining, we are listening, and we can read something about expanding the retirement age to 67 also. So I don't know how things are moving towards that rule to be enforced or to be legal for you guys to fly a little bit longer. And I have no idea how you see it.
Yeah, so there is the official stance from the union that I'm a member of is that there's not a shortage of pilots. There's a shortage of how do they put it? Qualified pilots? No, I don't know. They kind of turn it around a little bit, saying that there are people out there that are qualified to do the job. It's just that they don't want to do the job, the commitment that it takes in their time, time away from their family, and the compensation. Yeah, that's important. But it's especially with the regional airlines. Until very, very recently in the U.S., regional airline flying was horribly paid. I mean, there were people flying as first officers at regional airlines qualified for food stamps, money from the government, poverty level kind of salaries that was just, to me, unconscionable. The airlines, but they could get away with doing that because people could see the goal, the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so I have to, kind of like me going into the military. Well, if I got to do that to get to where I want to go, then I'll just suck it up and do it. But just working under very, very difficult conditions and getting paid nothing basically, to get that experience, to get on with being like interns almost, like not even getting paid. Now, I know that they did pay, but, very little. They've had to finally, the regional airlines, to get people to even consider doing this, no matter how amazing a job it is to fly an airplane, you still have to pay your rent, you have to pay for your car, you have to pay for insurance. If you have a family, you have them to support. You can't do it. You just can't. And so finally they said, okay, we've gotten to the point where we have to start raising our pay scales to get people to even think about flying for our regional airline. Honestly, and I could be wrong about this. I'm not an industry pundit or expert, but I think at some point the regional airlines here and the regional major structure is going to just evolve into just one airline, from the people that have very little experience flying the smaller regional type airplanes to the big giant A380 kind of jets flying around the world. I think it's all going to be a one size, one airline fits all kind of thing. I don't know. Don't ask me about this kind of advice, and don't ask me for financial advice, because you're just going to go wrong. And if you do ask me for financial advice, just do whatever the opposite is of what I tell you to do, and then you'll be much better off. And don't even get me started on relationship advice. I thought I was an expert, almost over 39 years of marriage, but turns out I guess I wasn't. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents about and then I think you said there was another twist.
No, just about if you see the 67, 8 rule, if that thing is going to happen anytime soon. Or
you know what? I've been hearing. Yeah, I've been hearing this whole argument or idea of, it was when I was hired in '88, age 60 was a retirement age. I think it was 2007 they passed the law or the regulations that allowed us to go up to 65. So basically, my last several years with Acme have been, in my mind, kind of gravy. I thought I was going to be retired years ago. But I've been hearing a lot in the last 15 years, this idea that they're going to bump it up to 67. And I honestly didn't think that was even had any kind of a shot. The union, ALPA, is very against it. I don't personally, I think it's not a great idea. I mean, I have noticed in the last couple of years, but especially in the last 6 months or so, and I don't know if I'm an average pilot or below average or whatever, but I can tell that my cognitive abilities are definitely not what they were when I was in my 30s and 40s, even 50s. And I think that it's not a good idea, but there are exceptions, of course. There are some very, very sharp people that are in their 70s and 80s that are way smarter than I am, and decision-making and thinking skills are probably much higher than my level. But for me personally, I think that 65 is a good age. But anyway, I'm surprised that through the House of Representatives here in our country with the FAA reauthorization bill, they ended up passing the age 67 language. And now it's got to go to our Senate, which is the other half of our legislature. If you had asked me this 6 months to a year ago, I said there is absolutely no way that this is going to pass in Congress. Now I'm thinking, I don't know. It looks like maybe it will pass. And then the question that I get, of course, Jeff, of course you're going to miss flying. Are you going to stay until 67? Or even if you've retired and they have the retro ability to come back? And I said, no, I am so looking forward to living my retirement life. I mean, I as much as I love flying, especially flying in the airlines, it's a great, I mean, I can't think of a better job. But there are still some things that I want to do. I was looking at what do they call that? A table that insurers use for determining your life expectancy. I'm not sure what the Brazil or Portuguese word would be, actuarial table, I think, or something like that. And because I have my mom passed away in 2015, and I inherited some of her individual retirement account, and so now it's in my name. And every year we have to withdraw a certain amount based on your actuarial data. And last year, I was telling a lot of people about this. It really got my attention. I looked at this thing. I'm like holding up a piece of paper, but it wasn't a piece of paper. It was online. I was looking on the website, and I look at this box, and it says 22.3, I think the number was. I'm like, 22.3, what's that? And this is last year. So it basically was saying that this is based on when I was born, my health, everything about me. They're betting that I have about 22.3 years left in my life. And I'm like, what?
That's how many cycles before you have to, the MEL is expired.
Exactly. I'm looking at that thinking, oh, you got to be kidding me. And and then I started doing the math in my head. Okay, I'm 64, 22. Oh, that's like 67, 66, 86, 87 years old. I'm thinking, oh, heck, I'm not going to even make it that long. I'm pretty sure there's no way that I can. So that number that they put in the little actuarial number is probably being very liberal. And I'm thinking, you know what? I don't have a heck of a lot of time left in my life. I want to do all these things that I want to make sure I do before I pass on to my next life. And so, no, I'm not going to stick around for another couple of years. Not only that,
you have to be grateful that to have a little bit of 1 hour, an hour and a half from your life here with us, Jeff. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it is. It really. And you guys are all young. And I know that you said 31 was, you're thinking that that's old. Well, yeah, I know it feels old to you, but right now, I'm looking at somebody at 31, and you're like, my oldest child is 36, I think, and my youngest is 26. You could be my children, although, trust me, I don't know your mother, so it's not me. But
you have the same age, then. Listen, I wanted to go back there a little bit, Jeff, on the amazing airplanes that you flew throughout this career. I know you said you have your command on the 727. So I just wanted to go back there and learn a little bit of those amazing airplanes that you flew, and how was it in general to become an airline pilot? Because that's always what you wanted. Now you're doing it. How was it?
Yes. In fact, when I got hired by this big major legacy carrier, it was almost like a letdown. It was like, I've worked so hard for so many years to get here. And I was always like, oh, wow, okay. All I have to do now is just not die. You get a medical every year at the time, and then every 6 months when you get to the point where you have to have it every 6 months. And don't do something really stupid like, bend metal or crash or whatever, so it's just
our bust Cuban airspace.
Well, that was in the Air Force. And honestly, I really did think that when that happened, because the aircraft commander, the way he handled the situation was not the right way to handle the situation. And that's why it got all run up the whole diplomatic channels. And, before we even made it up to Delaware on our flight out of Cuba, we were already given the indication that we were grounded and that we were on administrative leave. I'm thinking, oh, there it is. My whole darn career just went right down the toilet because of what we did back in Cuba. But turns out, no, that wasn't true. Now the aircraft commander got a little bit more trouble than I did. I was just a brand new guy, that didn't know any better. But anyway, let's see. We were talking about
you were talking about when you got to the airline. Yeah.
So the airline. I'm finally here. Okay. I work, we at the time started off as a flight engineer position on the 727. That was the starting job. And now some airlines, the flight engineers were just professional flight engineers. They were not pilots. But at most of the big airlines at the time, there were people flying the flight engineer position, in the flight engineer position were qualified pilots, and it was just kind of like the starting point. So I started as a flight engineer on the 727. And I did that for a year and a half. I could have, after about a year, moved to the DC-9 right seat and been in a flying position. But I don't know about you guys, but I am not a big lover of going to training and going to the simulator and being evaluated and analyzed and learning all new stuff. And I thought, wait a minute, if I am looking at this correctly, I can just stay on the panel, the flight engineers panel, for another 6 months. And then I can just move from this seat to the seat that's right here in front of me, the right seat of the 727. And I already know the airplane. I just have to learn how to fly it. So I knew all about the systems and everything else. So I did that. So a year and a half in the flight engineer seat, went through a very short course in the simulator training complex for the right seat, first officer position. And then I did that for 7 years. And let me tell you something. I don't know if any of you have had the experience of, I doubt it, because all those airliners are gone pretty much. A 3-pilot airplane or 3-position airplane, captain, first officer, flight engineer. Being a first officer on one of those types of airplanes, and I got to fly 2 of them, the 727 and the L-1011, is like the best job in the world. I mean, we talk about it already, being an airline pilot is the best job in the world, but being a first officer on a 3-man crew is like, you are pretty much retired. You're just flying around to the next party. You don't do walk-arounds. You don't run checklist. I think we ran one checklist, like the pre-flight checklist. Other than that, that's it. You fly a leg, and then you talk on the radio the other leg. You fly a leg, you talk on the. That's it. You didn't have any responsibility. The captain had all the responsibility. In the simulator, and we know, if you've been in the simulator, you know that bad things happen in the simulator. And back in the day, I mean, it used to be multiple emergencies that was common. And things were just, nowadays it's much more realistic and not crazy like it used to be. But so as a first officer, something goes wrong, it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden the captain looks over at me and goes, "Hey, Jeff, set me up for a 15-mile final at this airport, blah, 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 this speed, blah, blah, blah." And then they go, "Okay, you have the airplane and the radios." And the captain and the flight engineer are just like, pieces of paper flying and screaming and crying. And I'm just sitting there going, sucks to be those guys. But all I have to do is just fly this airplane. It's easy. I know how to do this. So it's an awesome job. It really is. But unfortunately, I don't think that opportunity exists anymore in this world we live in. But I'm so happy that I got a chance to experience that. So from there, I moved to the L-1011 right seat. And again, that airplane is all the wonderful things you've heard about the Lockheed TriStar L-1011. They're true. That's an amazing airplane. It was fast. It was, you look at it, God, it can't be a fast.
Was it the first plane that did auto land, wasn't it?
It was one of the first ones that did Category 3. I think it was cleared all the way up to like Category 3C, but I don't think there weren't any other ground facilities that could handle Category 3. I mean, not only land, taxi to the gate with like completely automated. There wasn't the infrastructure for that anywhere. I don't believe. But anyway, Lockheed. I've never seen an airplane make a better landing, auto landing than that airplane. It was amazing. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about the L-1011 and how beautiful an airplane it was to fly, even hand fly. It just felt almost, a friend of mine had been flying the L-1011 for a while. He saw that I got the L-1011, and he had been on the 727 for a number of years. And he goes, "Oh, Jeff," he said, "man, you're going to love the 1011. It's like, it's the best airplane that you'll ever fly." And I went, there's no way that anything could fly better than the 727, because the 727 was an awesome airplane. There were times when I'd hand fly the 727 and I would forget that I was hand flying the airplane, and I'd move the heading knob or the pitch knob to make a change in the auto flight system, and nothing would happen, and would, like, all of a sudden my heart was just start beating hard. I'm thinking, oh my God, we're not, and then I go, oh, well, that's right, the autopilot's not on. And that's how stable that airplane was. But anyway, he was right. The L-1011 was even better. And I got to do that for about 3 years. And then I thought, yeah, I'm getting to that point now where these people, for those of you who are first officers out there flying with a bunch of captains, and after a while, you start realizing, wait a minute, some of these, you fly with some amazing people, very skilled, good leaders, just fun to fly with. But there are times when, you'll fly with somebody and you're going, how did this person actually make it through training or be recommended to be a captain? They're like idiots. And so I think it's a matter of, getting more and more experience. You're not the new guy anymore. And then you're starting to realize, you know what, if this guy made it through training, I think I can do it. And so that's when you start thinking, okay, I'm tired of this. I need to start being the decision maker. I need to be the leader. I need to go and check out as captain, and then need to say, okay, let's do it. And I wanted to check out as captain on something that I'd flown. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's not going to happen in the L-1011, because the L-1011 back in those days, that was the queen of the fleet at Acme. That was what all the guys were retiring on. So being a captain was a long ways away. It was never going to happen. But the 727, I was just senior enough to be at the bottom of the list of captains based in Atlanta on the 727. So I put my bid in, got it, checked out as captain on the 727 back in 99 or 2000, I think 2000. And I knew that they were kind of going to be in the process of retiring the airplane. But even then, I'm thinking, I want to fly an airplane that I've flown before. So all I have to do is just concentrate on, changing what hand does what, flying the airplane, and doing some, making command decisions and working through cockpit resource management or crew resource management or whatever we're calling it these days. So I knew that it wouldn't be a long stint before I would probably get bumped off the airplane. But I flew it for almost 2 years. And what happened was back in 2001, on the 11th of September, you'll remember it was a big event in New York and Washington, D.C., 9/11. And that just accelerated everything as far as the retirement of the 727. So I was in the second group of captains that got displaced, bumped off the 727. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I think now finally I'm going to have to really work for a living for the rest of my career, because, I'm not going to be able to go back to the L-1011, the 727 there. And in fact, the L-1011 was even starting the retirement process. And this little airplane they call the Mad Dog. And it was such a ridiculed, it's so funny these days. And even when I was flying it, people, oh man, you fly the Mad Dog. And I'm thinking, really? You think that that's a good thing to fly? It was in the 727 and L-1011 world, it was like, oh, those poor people, they have to fly that airplane. And so the only thing I could fly captain on in Atlanta, because I didn't want to commute to fly captain on like the 737 or whatever, I thought, okay, I'm just going to suck it up and I'm going to fly as little as I have to and then move off to a Boeing. I started flying the MD-88, which is a stretched DC-9 with more modern avionics and better engines and that kind of thing. I started flying and going, well, this isn't really that bad. It doesn't really suck like people said it would. And I know the first officer over there is doing a lot of work. 75% or more of everything that's happening in the flight, this guy over here sitting right next to me is doing. I'm just like doing what I was doing on the 727 as a captain. And the trips were pretty much the same kind of trips I was flying. I think it's not so bad. Maybe I'll just stay here for a little bit longer. And then I started, as I mentioned earlier in your show, I started experiencing seniority. And as I mentioned, there's the theory of seniority and the actual experience of it. And I thought, I'm getting this whole thing now. I can kind of decide when I want to fly, when I want to be home, what kind of trips I want to fly. I like this. Okay, now I understand. Maybe I'll just stay on this a little bit longer. And then as time went on, the airplane that I never, ever wanted to fly, the Mad Dog, became the airplane that I flew longest of anything in my career. I flew that for 18 years, 12,360 hours or something like that of my experience is on that airplane. And I ended up falling in love with the thing. It was a great airplane. And I got to the point finally, because I kept looking, I'm going to move. My plan was to go to the 757, 767, which is a common category at my airline. And I kept going, well, as soon as I have like really, really good seniority, I'll move to that. And I never made it. I kept getting so comfortable with having super seniority that I thought, yeah, it'd be nice to fly the 757, 767, but I don't want to give up my seniority. So I thought finally, I'm going to retire on this airplane. And I just about made it. But then this thing happened, COVID, that kind of accelerated the retirement of, just like the 727 after 9/11, the MD-88 after COVID kind of accelerated retirements, and it went away on June 1st of 2020. And I think my last trip on it was the end of May. I flew one of the last trips on that airplane, and then I was home for 4 months, and then I trained on, and the airplane that I'm flying now is the Boeing 717, which is really not a Boeing. It's 717. It's a McDonnell Douglas MD-95, which is like a little miniature, not miniature. It's a smaller version of the Mad Dog, basically. I like to call it the Mini Dog. I think I'm the only one out there that probably does call it that. But it's a great airplane. It's like what I would imagine flying a big business jet would be like. It's very responsive. It's like the best version of the DC-9 that they've ever made. Interestingly, my type ratings, I only have 2 type ratings. The first one that I got was a 727. The second one I got was a DC-9 when I checked out on the MD-88. I've never actually flown a, quote, DC-9, really. I mean, technically, yeah. I guess the 88 was really a DC-9-88, and then they decided to call it MD instead of DC-9-whatever. But my certificate, this is my medical certificate, but my actual flying certificate, airline transport pilot, has 727 and DC-9. And I just always kind of chuckle because I've actually really never flown a DC-9, but yeah, I guess I have. So that's what I fly now. I've been doing that since November of 2020. And that's what I'll retire on.
Hora do cafezinho do Farol de Pouso. Oferecimento. AV House. Arquitetura aeronáutica, projetos de hangares, aeródromos e condomínios aeronáuticos. De pilotos para pilotos. E Nex Atlas, o aplicativo definitivo de planejamento de voo e navegação aérea do piloto brasileiro. Ajude o Farol de Pouso a continuar produzindo conteúdo aeronáutico de qualidade. Acesse apoia.se/Farol de Pouso e contribua você também. Você escolhe com quanto quer ajudar. É rápido e sem complicação. Acesse também linktree/Farol de Pouso e confira todos os conteúdos EAD já produzidos pela nossa equipe. Você ajuda a gente e ainda alavanca sua carreira. Procurando melhorar seu inglês, se preparar para sua primeira seleção de companhia aérea, buscando sua elevação para comando ou pensando em expatriar? Então, conte com a gente. Acesse FP Aviation no Instagram ou LinkedIn e fique pronto para o mercado de trabalho. Agora, de volta ao nosso episódio.
Nice period of your life that you lived on flying these amazing machines, and also made me think about what most of the young generation will still face with regards to crises, right? So you just mentioned 2 of them that you lived through, and actually how it impacted on your career. Mm-hmm. And I think that the younger generation, they are looking at now the revamp or the rebounds after the COVID and now everybody's hiring. So, oh, wow, this looks amazing. You know, people are getting the jobs. If you go to any air club in Brazil now, you see all the instructors are fleeing, and they get jet jobs, or even the other colleagues flying the turboprops and then the small jets, and everything keeps going on and on. But then what happens, and what can you tell them, Jeff, whenever shit hits the fan on big crises like that?
Yeah, so my peers in the military, some were like me who knew a little bit about the world of airline flying and the ups and downs, the cycles of good times and bad times. But a lot of the people that were in the military with me knew nothing. I mean, if you had told them that they were going to be flying as an airline pilot at some point in their life or their lives, they would say, no way, man, I'm going to be a military pilot. I'm going to retire, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, what happens in the military, at least in the U.S., is that you kind of end up, flying a lot, and then they start moving you into, different leadership positions, and you got to do a tour at the Pentagon, and you're not in the cockpit the whole time. There are some exceptions, but most pilots in the military only fly a certain amount, and then all of a sudden they're not flying anymore because they're making way for the new generation, the younger people, which makes sense. They get disillusioned with the whole thing, and then they thought, well, I have a friend that flies for the airlines, and he's making pretty good money. He's got a lot of time off, so maybe I should look into that. So there are a lot of people like that ended up. In fact, ironically, I was only one of maybe 3 or 4 of us out of 60 in my pilot training class in the Air Force that were definitely going to do the military as a short a period of time as we could and get into the airlines, and the rest of them were all career military guys. I'd say, and even at Acme, most of the people in my pilot training class ended up getting hired by Acme Airlines. It's just kind of ironic to me that the people that they would swear there's no way that they would ever be an airline pilot, or anyway. So setting it up here to say that there are some people that got hired by Acme, and at the time in the late 80s, the airline was making bank, and it was the sky is the limit. The job is great. The compensation is awesome. Lots of time off. Some of the people in the leadership of this company did a very, very foolish thing, in my opinion, telling us, take the money, like the 401k money, or whatever savings account, I forgot what they called it at the time. Take that money, like 6% of your paycheck, or I don't know what it was. You put that aside. When you're retiring in 30 years or 25 years, you'll have a couple $1 million in the bank, and you'll get this great. We had a great retirement. 60% of your final average earnings. It was like you could take a lump sum and get $1 million or $2 million, and then an amazing amount of money every month. It was just like, whoa, I can't believe that this is happening to me. And they were advising guys, go out there and buy that big house and buy that fancy car and everything else. And I'm thinking, what are they crazy? Now at the time, my airline had never furloughed anybody and never really gone through really, really bad times like most of the other major airlines had. And I'm thinking, well, just because we haven't doesn't mean that, what did they say? Past results don't guarantee future performance. Yeah. So you got to remember that. And some of these guys, when things started going downhill, I mean, they were moaning and groaning because they had this huge mortgage payment, and they're driving this really fancy Porsche or, Mercedes Benz and everything else. And I'm thinking, dude, yeah, you should have lived a little bit more frugally. And anyway. So that's advice. Don't listen to people. I mean, understand that we are going to have highs, and everything you can't imagine that you could make any more money or have any more time. I'm just going to be a beautiful thing. But then you have 9/11, and then you have the pandemic. And you know what? It's a cycle. If you look at it, it's a cycle that has gone on from the beginning of airline flying, and you have to understand that. And so I always recommend, if you can. Now, I didn't do this myself. I wish that I'd given myself this advice. If you're going to get a college education, or even learn a trade or something like that, learn something that's not attached with airline flying, or even aviation, maybe, like something that is in a different world, because you want to have a backup plan. You want to have a plan B. If this airline thing, you could go to your next physical and they say, you know what, I hate to tell you this, but there's this little anomaly with your heartbeat, and I don't think you're going to be able to fly. I can't issue a medical certificate. I mean, it doesn't matter what age. It could be an old guy like me, or you could be somebody in your 30s or younger, and not be able to pass a medical to do this amazing job. So always, if I'd listened to my advice, if I knew any better back then, I shouldn't have gotten a degree in aviation management. I should have gotten a degree in something that I could actually use in case I couldn't do my dream job of flying airliners. Fortunately for me, it all worked out. I didn't experience again, my career has been, it's all about timing. So when you get hired, you look at the number of people that are senior to you on the list, but then the number of people that have been hired after you. That's the most important thing in your first part of your career, is knowing how many people are behind you, because that's going to be your cushion if things start going bad and they have to furlough pilots. The only thing I've experienced in my career is some stagnation. I got displaced technically twice, but really only once. And so all in all, my career has been just carefree and just beautiful, wonderful. And in fact, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start the podcast, is because I know that because I've flown with people who have not had it well at all. They've had horrible, this is their 6th airline, their 7th, like number of airlines. They've had to start from the bottom every time. And they say, what about your background? And I said, well, I did the military, and then I got hired by Acme, and then I've been here all this time. And they look at you like, wow, that sounds so nice. And yeah, go ahead.
And amazing enough, you just gave us some really amazing and incredible life and financial advice. Like you said earlier, that don't trust your advice, but make your savings account. It's a huge advice. And you even brought up already the next point that we would like to touch on, which was about the podcast. Like, how did you start APG? Why? And how did you meet those amazing folks that you have on board with you?
Well, I love talking about this because people just don't believe me. Again, let me give you some advice. If you're out there and you want to, and I'm sure you guys fall in this category, you have a passion to share with people this amazing world of flying and aviation, and this is the vehicle to use to get there. I don't know if you've heard this from me or on other podcasts or my own podcast, and it's embarrassing for me to admit this, but I am a gadget freak. I love, this interface that I'm using right now, and I have a Stream Deck controller, and I have this very nice camera and these lights, and I can push buttons and make the lights go off and on, and I can I love mixers and microphones, and I kind of, I've always wondered what it would be like to be a radio announcer and a DJ and that kind of thing. And so when podcasting, and I got involved in podcasting very early on. I converted to Catholicism back in 1999, 2000, and shortly thereafter, I was reading every book I could get about Catholicism, and then all of a sudden, I started hearing about this thing called a podcast. I'm thinking, what's that about? And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. You can get these little MP3 players. And I mean, I was listening to audio, computer audio, back in the days of, what was it called? Real audio. I was actually doing very, very clunky processes to get a show like what you're doing, when they had nothing like these kind of things going on back then, but somebody doing a podcast or some kind of an audio thing and converting it into an MP3 that I could put on my little river, what do they call that thing? Anyway, it was like one of the early MP3 players. And anyway, so I when podcasting started becoming more mainstream, definitely not mainstream, but more available. And it was about the same time with the Apple. I had the original iPhone, and I don't think it was the original version of the iOS that they ended up getting into the podcasting game. The Apple Podcast Player and that kind of. But anyway, so you could almost, you could always get these podcasts on your phone. And I thought, I should check out, see if there were any podcasts about Catholicism, because that's, again, what my focus was, learning more about the church. And I stumbled upon this podcast by this guy named Father Roderick Van Hogen, a Dutch priest who was very engaging and very into technology and podcasting. He had a Sony mini disc player, and he had his headphones, and he'd walk around with his microphone, and he'd take you to the streets of Dublin, and you could hear all the music in the background. He called them sound seeing tours, and he'd talk, and then you could hear the stuff going on in the background. He'd just bring you there. And I'm thinking, oh man, this podcasting thing is amazing. And so I ended up getting involved with Father Roderick and another couple here in the U.S. In the Atlanta area with the first ever worldwide Catholic podcasting network. And I wasn't doing a podcast. I was just fascinated by this whole thing. I was just a supporter on the board of directors and kind of helped steer where the network was going. And then after a couple of years, I thought, man, I can't stand it anymore. I want to play with those microphones they're playing with and the mixers and doing all the editing and everything else. And so I thought, okay, so I need to start a podcast. What do I talk about? What can I possibly It's got to be a Catholic podcast, because this is the StarQuest production network, or StarQuest podcast network back then. I thought, okay, well, the only thing I know anything about is flying airplanes. So, how about I do a show called Catholic Pilot? And I was kind of reluctant to even breach the subject. We had a board of directors meeting after one of our yearly conferences. And I said, I was thinking about maybe starting a podcast, and I explained the whole concept, and they go, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And I went, really? Okay. So I ended up, and at the same time, I also had this idea for a community podcast called Catholic Weekend. And so I started doing that. It was a panel kind of a thing. At the same time, I was starting my own aviation thing. I learned really, really quickly that the feedback that I was getting from people regarding my Catholic Pilot show was 99.9999% aviation-related question and feedback and stuff like that. Nothing about because there are so many great Catholic podcasts in our network already. They didn't need to come to mine to get any information about Catholicism. And that's when I realized, maybe I need to make this just an aviation podcast and make it more of a secular thing, disconnected from the Catholic Church and religion and all that. And I'm thinking, that's what I'm going to do. So a year and a half after I started Catholic Pilot, I decided to rebrand the show Airline Pilot Guy. And I can go into detail on how I came up with that name. So I started that, and then all of a sudden, wow, it took off like crazy, because people that were looking for aviation podcasts, they see Catholic Pilot and they go, well, I don't want to listen to some dude, proselytizing their faith. And I don't blame them, So the audience started growing, and it was just me. I was just, I had a Zoom H1, or is it N1? H1 maybe, is like the very basic Zoom recorder. I can't remember the designation on it. And it was just a very cheap microphone. And my first Catholic Pilot podcast was and I was on a layover in Memphis, Tennessee, and I think I ended up doing about 40 something episodes of Catholic Pilot before I transitioned to the Airline Pilot Guy. In the very first Airline Pilot Guy show, episode 1, I talked about the horrible crash over the Atlantic, Air France, for 447, right? I think. Anyway, it just took off. And honestly, the only thing I wanted to do, I just wanted to play with the technology. I really didn't care if anybody was listening. Honestly, I didn't care about how many downloads I had. I wasn't trying to make money. I had a great job flying airplanes, and it was compensated me very well. So I wasn't one of the people out there that decides that they want to get into podcasting because they want to make a lot of money and they want to quit their real job and do podcasting for a living. There are some people that can do it, but I've been around for quite some time, and there are things I could have done to probably, have advertising and everything else and maybe make a decent amount of money, but it's no way it was ever going to be a replacement job for what I really wanted to do. It was just an excuse to play with stuff, play with gadgets, play with technology. Again, I tell people, do not do it the way I do it. Have a real reason to start a podcast. But anyway, so what happened over time is I realized I just kind of stumbled into this thing for all the wrong reasons. But now, wow, I'm in a place where I'm really having an effect on people's lives, and I'm learning a lot. I only knew a little bit about military aviation, a little bit, in this world of flying. Airline stuff is it's a slice of this big pie. And so I had a couple small little slices of aviation pie in my background, but I started learning about people that this world of PC simming and virtual airlines and virtual air traffic control. I'm going, what? No way. People don't do that. And then, people are flying A380s from London to Beijing. I don't know how long the flight, I'm thinking, no, that can't be right. Really, people are controlling them. Just like blew my mind. Knew nothing about it.
One thing, when we had there was one of your advice that we didn't follow, because when the COVID happened, instead of us going and to study somewhere something else, we actually started all this Farol de Pouso thing, right? And we were doing all that. We were like, okay, we are flying. And specifically, one of our favorites, especially for me, Guy and Caio, there was a 727 that we could actually fly together and share the cockpit and be PFPM on the same aircraft, flying virtually from one place to the other, doing radio work and all that, flying together.
And you were in different places, right?
In different places, flying the same aircraft as PFPM.
Wow.
And then at some point we had João and Conrado, the other two guys that are here with us. And because everybody was grounded, we decided, okay, let's have some of the guys like watching what we're doing and having like cruise chats, like all doing this conversations that we normally do when we're bored, flying, cruise, checking the systems and transferring FIRs and so on. And then we had this, and then João and Conrado, they had this idea, okay, let's have a podcast. And I was like, nah, podcast is something for guys like Jeff, like they know what they're doing, APG and all that. So like let's not make it happen. And then actually, this is exactly what we were doing with the COVID. And then we ended up doing all that. Now we don't have the time to fly.
I know. People say, yeah, what are you going to do when you retire? I go, heck, I have hardly time to go fly a trip because there are so many things. I mean, doing a podcast is not like, okay, I'm just going to sit down, turn this on and hit record. No, it's like, it takes up my entire week when I'm not flying and not singing at my church. I'm doing podcasting stuff, prepping for the next show, post editing from the one we just finished. And then it's like, oh man, okay. Do I have like a day or two to breathe before we have to do another show? I mean, I say have to. I love doing it. It's like getting together with friends every week. It really is. It's a great excuse. But it's amazing how much time it really an effort. It really does take to do a podcast and be successful at it. And in your definition of success, my definition of success isn't I'm making a lot of money. No, and my definition of success is not the number of. I can't tell you how the last time I looked at my downloads number, because I don't care, because I don't have advertisers that I have to tell them this is how many downloads we have, so now you owe me this much money. It's community supported. If people think that it's worth sending us money, maybe to keep encouraging us to continue to do this for however long we do this, that's great. And that's the way I want to leave it. I don't want to have to worry about saying the wrong thing because an advertiser is, you know what I'm talking about. It's the podcast. So anyway, I started the podcast, as I said, for the wrong reasons, but now I kind of finally worked my way into the real reason for doing this show. And then the thing that really amazed me was I started getting feedback from like on the other side of the world, people in Iran and Iraq and Africa and Europe and Russia and in the East, in the Philippines and Singapore, all over the world. And I'm thinking, heck, people are listening to this all over the world. And this is a community that's being built. And I didn't purposely do it. It just happened. So basically the bottom line is, to answer your question, I just wanted to play with gadgets and pretend I was a radio announcer. And I talked about the only thing I knew anything to talk about, which was my faith and flying, and then just flying. And a community evolved from it. And then people say, well, how did you pick your co-hosts? And really, I didn't pick my co-hosts. My co-hosts picked me. They were people that, like you guys, listening to the show. And I don't know if you share the same experience, but I can always tell on other podcasts I listen to when people are sending in audio feedback and that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, that's the beginning. That's the seed right there. Because you send in some audio feedback to a show, and then all of a sudden you hear your voice and go, oh, you get the goosebumps, and you go, wow, that's cool. That was me and then before you know it, you're either going to be a co-host on somebody else's podcast, or you're going to start your own podcast. It seems like a natural evolution for a lot of people. But and same for me. I was sending in feedback to other podcasts, but not aviation, believe it or not. It was, as I said, I was focused at the time at the Catholic podcasting world, not the flying world. And so honestly, I didn't even know what other aviation podcasts were out there. And I'm thankful that I didn't really copy anybody's format, as far as I know. What I did know, doing the community show with SQPN, because I've always been focused on community. And I knew that I wanted to do a show where when somebody sent me feedback, I wanted to make sure that I answered their feedback. And so it was easy to do when I first started, when my shows were only half an hour, 45 minutes long. But then as the audience started to grow and the community started to grow around it, and more and more people started sending more and more feedback. And so the show kept getting longer and longer and longer, because my goal was, it was just a goal that I set up for myself, answer everybody's feedback. And so the show has always been kind of centered on at least half of it handling feedback. And I think that's what made the show that I was doing a little bit different than everything else that was out there. And I didn't do that. It wasn't because I wanted to be different and be any bigger or smaller or better or worse than anybody else. It's just that's just what I thought. When you guys go to a party, or some kind of a social gathering, and they find out that you have something to do with aviation, or you're a pilot or whatever. Oh my gosh, you know what I mean? They'll now you are the center of attention, and everybody has all these questions about flying and layovers and all these different things. And that's kind of, I kind of pictured doing the podcast like me being at a party and people asking me all these questions about stuff. So people, instead of at a cocktail party, they're sending feedback via email. But it finally got to the point where I ended up getting so much feedback that I couldn't answer every piece of it. And a lot of the feedback, I've been doing this for a long time, started being the same kind of question over and over again. And I still haven't figured out how to get around that, because there are people that just started listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show who don't know that, they haven't listened to all that. They don't have the APG syndrome, and they haven't gone back to the beginning and listened to all the episodes. They have no idea that somebody else or several people have asked that same question over and over again. I at one point I tried to come up with a way of like making some kind of a database that had this question, go to this episode at this time stamp or whatever, and there I answered that question you just asked me, but I thought that's too much work, and I can't find anybody that's going to want to dedicate the kind of time to do something like that. So I would just kind of happily, I finally decided 3 hours. That's the max. I can't subject people to more than that amount of time to listen to the show every week. And it's taken me a lot of time. As you know, whoever's doing the post-editing work on your show, or maybe all of you share in it, but you can multiply the time that we're spending today by 2 or 3 or maybe sometimes more time to edit it after we've done it. And I'm trying to do the best job I can of making it so you don't have to do a lot of, although I'm way over the amount of time that you were probably expecting to spend with me. And so I do apologize for that. But so it will be kind of difficult for you to edit this. But anyway, so it's a big, huge time commitment, right? And I said, okay, 3 hours, that's it. Now, what's interesting is I started adding co-hosts. And as I said, they started sending me information, like Steph started sending emails like, hey, I'm a multi-engine. I'm working on my commercial, I think at the time, and I'm a doctor and blah blah blah. But I hear you talk about beer, especially IPAs, India Pale Ales. And she goes, North Carolina. I live in Charlotte, the Charlotte area, and man, North Carolina makes some amazing beers. So hey, if you're on a layover sometime, I'll come by, pick you up, and we'll take you and me and my dog and my Jeep, and we'll take you to some of these places and sample some of what North Carolina has to offer as far as awesome beer. And I went, whoa, that sounds great. So I did that for a few times. And then one time I was going to be in Charlotte, like I got in at like 9 o'clock in the morning, like one flight from Atlanta to Charlotte, boom, and off until the next day. And I'm thinking, okay, that'll be perfect. I'll do my show. I'll record my show while I'm in Charlotte. And then I thought, I wonder if Dr. Steph, is available to come and do the show with me. And so she said, yeah. And I went, okay. And so she joined me on a show, was my co-pilot. And then it was a good reaction from the audience, hearing me with somebody else and kind of bouncing things off each other and that kind of thing. And then about 6 weeks later, I was down in Miami. We had planned a meetup down there, and Miami Rick called and said, hey, I'm off on the day that you're coming in, and I'll pick you up from the hotel, take you out to the airport where we're having this meetup. And I said, well, if you're off, I said, why don't you come by, like what Steph did a few weeks back, and join me as my co-pilot. And he goes, oh yeah, okay, we'll do that. That, by the way, you'll appreciate this. Rick is from Ecuador. And I think he's like Ecuadorian citizenship and U.S. citizenship. And, you listen to him, at least my ears, I didn't hear any hint that he didn't grow up in the United States, his accent and everything else. When we did that show in Miami, and after we finished up, he said, let's get something to eat. And we went to, I think it was a Peruvian place, and we were right down in downtown Miami, Biscayne Boulevard. And anyway, there was a really good, he said, there's a really good Peruvian place I'd like to take you to. And I went, okay. And so we went in there, and then a waitress came up, and he starts talking in Spanish. And I'm going, well, am I having a stroke? I mean, like, what? I don't understand what he's saying, but it seems like this waitress understands exactly what he's saying. And I just kind of looked at him like, where did that come from? I mean, I knew he had some of that in his history, but I never once heard any kind of an accent at all. And it was just, I was blown away. Wow, that is amazing how you can speak English with a perfect U.S. accent and then speak whatever you just did there, and it was just like butter, like liquefied butter. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Anyway, that was an aside that I probably didn't need to take, but I just, in my memory, I thought about that first time with Miami Rick. Anyway, so did one with Miami Rick, one with staff, and I was doing, as I mentioned, I was doing this Catholic Weekend panel show every Saturday morning, and I'm thinking, hey, why don't I do a panel kind of a show like what you guys are doing? I'm already doing a panel talk show, and I know how to do it. I'm wondering if these people would be interested in doing this on a regular basis. And so I really expected them to say, oh, no, there's no way we're going to have time to do that. They both said, yeah. And I went, really? Really? You know, we do this every week. Yeah, well, okay. All right. So that's how I started adding co-hosts, and that was in 2015. So 6 years I was doing the show solo. And then since 2015 on, I've had co-hosts. And then this guy named Captain Nick started sending, he discovered podcasts, and he started sending in some audio clips, and he kind of made his own little character, the old curmudgeon, and his audio was always complaining about us Yank pilots, covering up the frequency 12345, which at the time, when I was flying all around the world, 12345 was kind of a party line, kind of a frequency. I guess something happened at the time I was doing that, and now is like, you don't do that, but or maybe they still do, I don't know. But he was complaining about that, and complaining about John F. Kennedy International's ATIS, which there's a lot to complain about, that's for sure. But anyway, it was a kind of an endearing, engaging kind of complaining old guy, input to the show. And I just loved this character that he had made for himself. Turns out that character is pretty much him. Anyway, not really, but you know what I mean. There's some true things happening there with his real personality. And so I just love that. And so, again, I feel like you guys are going, you know what, we do have other things going on in our life, Jeff.
Absolutely no. Absolutely
okay.
No. We can keep going.
Okay. I'm starting to feel guilty for just yapping so much.
Rest assured that they will not edit anything out.
No, you can edit all you want to out.
We are not doing it.
As far as I'm concerned.
The only clip will be that one when you have that camera glitch or camera thing. But everything else is, for us, is very, very the translation of success. When we are considering what is success, when you want to have a podcast, when you want to have a project. For me now, this is the moment that I feel successful with our channel. When I look back and I can actually give you the space with this, with your humble, charismatic, position, so that you can feel so comfortably, acquainted here with us that you can just chat your mind off, and that's success for me, And
what I'm doing here is I'm not even thinking about all of your audience. Sorry, people. I'm here talking to you guys because you're my friends in flying, and I'm thinking to myself, the whole time I've been doing the show, I'm thinking I need to get down there and have some beers with these people or wherever they are in the world, because I'm going to have a lot of time maybe coming up here soon.
Yeah, you need to come down to Brazil to try our staple, which is cachaça. It's made of sugar cane. So,
that doesn't sound like a low carb diet thing.
Yeah, I don't know about the carbs, but the sugar is great.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, over the years, the podcast started, gaining speed, and the audience was growing, and it almost got to the point where I'm thinking, what if I just kind of get tired of doing this and don't want to do it anymore? I almost felt like I can't stop doing this now. I mean, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be very, very upset with me if I did that, especially now that I have co-hosts. Although now it'd probably be easier. I could just say, hey, you guys carry on with this thing and have fun with it. Come on every once in a while as a guest or whatever, but I'm not there yet. Trust me. but we, let's see, I think, Dr. Steph and Rick, and then some other people in the UK, Captain Al, Pip, the Plane Safety Podcast, and Captain Nick. They all kind of behind my back got together and said, hey, we should do something special. Looks like, the APG is coming up on the 200th episode, soon. And we should do something, to celebrate that. And so about October of 2015, Rick and Steph said, hey, we were thinking 200 is going to be right after Christmas time. It's going to be like the first week of January. We're thinking, we should do something special for the 200th episode. And I went, yeah, I guess, whatever. And she said, Rick says, well, Steph is going to have a medical conference that she's going to in Miami. And I'm thinking, well, she's going off of medical conferences. I use the air quotes on medical conferences that she takes. She goes to Park City, Utah, and goes snow skiing, but then they have a conference. Anyway, more like a boondoggle, actually. So I believed it. And so they kept saying, okay, well, you need to make sure you have some time off, during that first week of January. And I said, well, I have seniority. I can bid a trip. And they go, no, we don't want you to be on a layover. We want you to be down there, for a couple of days. And I went, oh, okay, I can make that happen. I'm senior enough to do that. And they kept nagging me about it. And, I should have picked up on the fact that something weird's going on here, but I didn't. I was just completely over my head. I didn't know what's going on. And so unbeknownst to me, like Captain Al and Pip and Nick over there in the UK, they were making plans and stuff. And they were going to fly over, or they did. They flew over to Miami for this 200th episode. I just thought we were going to be doing a few months earlier, Rick and I, when I was down in Miami, we did a on location podcast recording at this brew pub called Titanic Brewing, right there near the University of Miami. And we, in hindsight, I'm thinking, wow, that was kind of weird because I never actually asked anybody in the management of this establishment if we could record a show. We were just at a table kind of near the front of the thing, and we had a couple. It wasn't like a big production with lighting and wires and cables going all over the place. It wasn't. It was like just a couple of guys sitting at a table and had a recorder and a microphone and headphones and that kind of thing. But still, I probably should have asked if it was okay. We did that. So we decided, hey, let's do that again for the 200th. So yeah, let's do that. So we said, hey, we got you a hotel. It's like really close to this Titanic Brewing, down there. And so Rick says, hey, when are you flying down? And I said, I gave him the information. He goes, okay, I'll pick you up. I went, okay. And so I flew in, and the first thing Rick asks me is, just said, hey, you hungry? And I said, no, I ate something in Atlanta. I'm not hungry at all. And he goes, okay. And then all of a sudden he's pulling into this barbecue joint close to the airport. And I'm looking at him like, did you not hear? No, I said, I'm not hungry. And he goes, yeah, well, I'm hungry. You can have a beer or something while I eat. I went, oh, okay. I'm thinking, this is a little weird. And so I'm watching him eat some barbecue, and I'm drinking a beer. And then he goes, okay, let's go. I went, all right. So we started driving down toward the Holiday Inn or whatever hotel that he had booked for me near the place we were going to do the 200th on location kind of thing. And then he said, man, I got to stop at the drugstore. And I went, okay. And so he pulls into I said, look, I'll just stay in the car. I'm thankful that I did that, because I didn't know that the reason why I was stopping. He was trying to communicate with Dr. Steph. She hadn't quite made it to the brewery, and they were planning this big surprise. I had no idea. As I said, I've never been surprised ever in my life. I've never had a surprise party. And so he comes back and gets in the car. He goes, okay, let's go to the brewery. And I went, okay. And so we park in the back, and we're kind of walking up the front, the frontage of the brewery on this big busy boulevard. And I'm looking down, I'm thinking, I saw this head poke out like from a dark place and then back, and I'm going, that kind of looked like Steph's head. What is she doing? What's going on here? And so still, I'm not picking up anything like there's some kind of a big surprise going on here. And then I walk in and I hug Steph and I said, oh man, I'm thirsty. Let's get some beer. So I'm like waiting in line at the bar to get some beer. And then I feel this tap on my shoulder and I'm thinking, oh, who's this? And I turn around and this guy speaks in this very traditional British accent and he's holding a beer. He goes, here you go, Captain Jeff. And I'm thinking, I recognize that voice, but all I could see was the beer and this guy's chest. And I can look up and I go, Captain Nick? What are you doing here? And he goes, surprise, we're here for your 200th episode. And then I see two other guys standing next to him and they're speaking in British accents as well. Pip and Captain Al are there and they'd flown all the way from the UK to Miami to be there for our 200th episode. So anyways, we had a great episode. In fact, Captain Al, every time I drank a couple of gulps of beer out of my beer glass, I'd set it down and I was like busy with all the stuff that happens in a live recording and not paying attention. But every time I took another sip, the darn thing was full. So I don't know how much beer I had to drink that night, but it was probably a lot because by the end of it, the whole thing just finally got to me. And I was like tearful. I was crying. So happy that people thought enough to, put that whole thing together. Anyway, that couple of days there, I don't think I drank as much as I did in those 3 days as I did in the entire time I was in the Air Force. And I did a lot of drinking in the Air Force. Anyway, so it was a great time. But while Captain Nick was there, I took Steph and Rick aside and I said, hey guys, what do you think? Captain Nick, he's kind of built this character and he's pretty good with the language. And we have a lot of listeners over in the UK. And what do you think about asking him to be a regular on the show with the three of us? And they went, oh yeah, that'd be a great idea. So I took him aside and said, hey, would you consider, like being full-time with us every week? And he goes, I'd be honored. I can't do an English accent, but that deep British voice of his, he said, yeah. I went, okay, cool. So that's how Captain Nick ended up. So bottom line here, the way this whole thing has evolved is natural evolution. It's nothing that I've ever planned. In fact, there was a time when Captain Nick, when he was still flying, had a 2-day layover in Atlanta. And so we had plans to do a big meetup while he was there. And then the next day we were going to spend as a crew together on the lake in Captain Dana's, one of his boats out on a pontoon boat out on one of the local lakes. And I'm thinking, oh man, this would be a perfect time to do have a business meeting. We'd never had a business meeting. Anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, we could have a business meeting. All of us, Liz is flying down from Toronto. She's going to be in Atlanta. Steph's going to fly over. She flies everywhere on the drop of a hat. She's amazing. Rick didn't make it. But everybody was there except Rick. And I'm thinking, after I proposed that we have a business meeting and kind of do one of those things where, okay, let's see where we started, where we are now, and where we're going to go into the future, like a 5-year plan or, what I'm talking about, these business kind of plans and stuff like that. And then after I proposed that, I thought, Jeff, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Why? You've never ever planned anything on this podcast. Why would you now start doing that? You're going to ruin this. So I finally said to the rest of the crew, you know what? Let's just go have a day of fun. We'll go out in the boat and just float around, drink beer, and have fun. And let's not talk about where the show has been and where it's going into the future. So, because all we're going to do is ruin it. And they went, cheers. We agree. And that's what we did. So the whole thing basically is and people say, well, you built this great community. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't really build it. I just kind of started the podcast and it built itself, honestly. That's why I'm always hesitant to take credit for, and Liz bugs me all the time, Jeff, you just need to know you have to learn how to take a compliment. And I go, yeah, okay, whatever. But honestly, I didn't really do anything except start a show and try to make it a show that people would be attracted to and enjoyed listening to and wanted to be a part of. And really, the people that send me the feedback are really what kind of molds what the show is and where it's going to go, in the future. And So that's why I don't take credit for building this great community. It's just like, okay, you guys, you all built it, not me. It's just, I just happen to be the person at the head of it, I guess, that started it. You know, I'm the one that took the little rock from the top of the cliff or the hillside and just threw it, and then it just started picking up a couple of rocks as it goes down, and then all of a sudden now we're, you know, big boulders are going down the hill. And I also love people that are doing. There have been several shows that have been influenced by or inspired by what we've done at the APG for so many years, who are now just outrageously successful shows. Are just really, really good. In fact, I joke around a lot about it on our show. There's those two guys, those two air traffic controllers who are also pilots, Opposing Bases podcast. Is an awesome show, and they really have a great. They get along together. The way they engage with each other and everything. They're funny, but also they really know a lot, and I learn a lot from that show. And it makes me proud when people that listen to what we're doing and they go, well, those idiots can, like the guy I'm sitting next to, the captain, going, well, heck, if that guy can make it check out as a captain, I certainly can do it. And that's what a lot of people have done with new podcasts in recent years. They go, well, if that idiot can do this show, then certainly I can. At least I've got some talent. Not speaking for myself, of course. That's the other people. Anyway, so it's just very rewarding for me to kind of. I feel like I'm a grandfather looking at their children and their children's children, and it's just continuing on this great. This great tradition, new tradition of this podcasting, new media thing, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Consider it again as a compliment, is because you are really, really charismatic, and you are a great communicator, and that's why we've been here, enjoying, just floating through the stories and the memories. And for us, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on board our show here today. Having your presence in the Brazilian show, and to be able to present a little bit of your background, and of course, like if they would go now after they listen to you here for the first time, most of them, I'm very sure they will be inclined to start with number one and then just go on and on, because that's what we did back in the days when we started.
Crazy.
And yeah, you go Jeff, like really, you are, because you have this ability to connect. You are humble. You are connect not only with the people, but also connect your thoughts together and put them in a very nice, easy and playful way. Sometimes serious, sometimes more, just joyful and having your good time. And then we get entertained, right? Plus, whenever we're talking things that we love, which is aviation in first place, second, friendships that we make, third, people can come with all the orders, but like for us, the beers, which I have mine here already waiting for me. So of course we have
water.
all things in common. There you go. Lots of things in common. So on behalf of Eduardo, he came here as well. He was listening to a little bit. He's my friend and colleague. He was also always listening to your show a couple of years ago when we decided to expat. And Guilherme and many others that really would like to be here, but today, unfortunately, they are flying. We have to give you a big acknowledgement, a big round of applause, and a thank you, like full of gratitude, because like we are doing this because also we think we can enjoy a little bit, and then that exactly what you said, when you realize the impact that you're making in somebody's life, this is basically what we're here, doing a little bit of this recording of the history, and also for us looking back into our history and looking back into yours. It's amazing to be able to live in the present moment, and we are very happy to have you. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed being with you and being a part of your evolution and growth. And yeah, it's just been I apologize that I spoke in English the entire time. If I had tried to speak Portuguese, it would have been the show would have been over after a few seconds.
If I may add on what Felix just said, at the end of the day, you don't do basically 40 podcasts as a Catholic pilot and 580 plus as APG if it's not a pleasant and that we feel that we are having a pleasant time by hearing and by listening what you have to say and by listening what your fellow colleagues have to say. But I have to say that this conversation here was even more pleasant to have because it's really amazing to actually have a conversation with the people that we look up to. So on behalf of our entire community, I would also like to extend my thanks to what you have done and to what you are up to and to having this conversation today. It was a really, really pleasure from my side.
Thank you so much. I mean, I've enjoyed the heck out of it. And anytime, what do you got there? Punk IPA, Brewdog.
Hopefully they sponsor us.
Oh yeah, they should. I would. Yeah, but anyway, thanks so much for inviting me. I'd love to do it again sometime, and I promise I won't talk so much.
Okay, so we already have the spoiler here. There may be a part 2 in the future. Jeff, we really love to have you on board with us.
Yes, be our co-host for international guests. What do you think?
Yeah, we can go. We can do that. That's not a problem. We can ask him, or we can jump on someday if he wants to. But Jeff, for me, honestly, I had a really, really good surprise when I heard back from you the first time I invited you, because in the beginning you seemed to me so far. Even though I already sent feedback on the APG and got that on the air, but the time that I got a reply from you saying I would love to talk with you guys. I mean, that meant the world to me at that time. So again, just really, really wanted to thank you to be on board with us. And okay, Felix, now takes us out.
Well, just have to give you that quick shout out to Realizar, Hangar 33 and Trem de Pouso, because unfortunately, Jeff, our community in Brazil is not as supportive as yours. So we have these 3 companies that they help pay the coffees for the 2 guys over here. They do the editing. And hopefully maybe more people will be coming in and being motivated to give us some support, but basically it's to pay for their flying hours because we don't take any money out of it anyways.
Go on.
Just to pay another tribute to Jeff, we can actually ask his permission to use the old music for the coffee.
Oh yeah, you can use whatever you want.
What were you about to say?
I was going to say, for those listening, if they haven't cut me off yet, the podcasting is an amazing thing. It's free. It's free for you listening to the show, but it's not free for them. People would make the argument, well, yeah, you can go on there and there are services you can use and it doesn't cost anything, but there are so many financial things that they have to do, and then also their time can easily equate to money that they could have been making doing something else. But they're taking the time to do this because it's a passion of theirs. They enjoy doing it, but they also need some support. And that's and when I started listening to podcasts, I'm thinking, look at this. This is like a treasure, and it's all free. And then I started to think, you know what? I'm really getting a lot of value, a lot of entertainment, a lot of information from these people that are taking their time to do this. And I need to kind of pay back some value, give them some value for what they're doing, because I like what they're doing and I want them to keep doing it. And I'm afraid that if I don't give them something, buy them a cup of coffee. That's the way I started. In fact, I still do. The coffee fund. Buy me a cup of coffee. And you think, well, if I give them $1 or whatever per episode, or $1 a month, or $5 or whatnot, that's nothing. I mean, then they're not even going to notice that. But hey, all the people out there that are listening to this podcast, if every single one of you did it, it makes a big difference. It all adds up. It really does. And it gives you the motivation, gives us the motivation to keep doing what we're doing. And honestly, you could probably say, just like, flying airplanes for a living, how we kind of say, and they pay me for I would do this for nothing. Honestly, that's not really, for most of us, it's not true. I mean, we wouldn't be doing our jobs in aviation for free, although we enjoy it so much. It's almost as if we could do it for free. Same thing with this podcast. They enjoy doing it. They'd probably say, we would do this if we didn't make any money at all or have any financial contributions. But the reality is, you can only do it so long before you go, it's a lot of time. It's a major commitment. And it would be nice to get some kind of support from you. And I always welcome all kinds of support. People that send in feedback, they're supporting the show. People that tell other people about the show, that's a supporting this show. Time, treasure, talent. But the treasure part of it, don't forget that part. Even though you think that your contribution to their show here is going to be nothing, a drop in the bucket, it still means a lot. It really does mean a lot. So please, give money to these guys. Buy them some coffee.
Perfect, Josh.
No, seriously. I mean, honestly.
And that's very kind. Thanks for your contribution as well on the support side of it, Jeff. Well, in this case, what can I say? Well, mostly I want to see Caio flying his commercial pilot hours, and those are the tiny things that we are aiming at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I agree. If there's any droplets that will come to that whole bucket of flying hours, would be good. And but for me, just one final note is the value is having you here. It's for the first time being able to meet you in online meeting, but in person, as we got used after the COVID. So this is, as I said before, is the real meaning of a successful episode and a successful week. Plus, as you said before, it's a moment that we can meet and I can see the faces of my friends. And now even João is there. João might be in and out from the airports. So he was, look at that. Yeah, young guy with his stripes.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
And
is he old enough to fly an airplane?
Yeah, he's 16. His parents gave him permission.
Oh, okay, good.
I got a permission from CAA to fly airplanes underage.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Yeah.
But he has to fly with those big tags, under the minors. Those big tags for the UMs.
Yeah.
And the complete minor pilot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Always needs to be somebody with him in the cockpit just to make sure he behaves.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, Jeff, it's very, very nice to have you here. And, we came to a very nice episode, and we don't care if it's long because
I'm sorry, people. I apologize.
No, exactly. We were having fun, and we were having a great time. And hopefully we can have more time to chat. I'm curious if you're going to have your mobile station on your RV, so maybe you can be somewhere in the middle of the road and we can record that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be, my motorhome is definitely going to be my mobile recording studio. I'm going to be going all over the U.S., probably some Canada. I don't know. It's going to be a little bit difficult drive to get all the way down to where you all are. Probably have to put the thing on a ship to make it down there. But I don't have to have a motor coach to visit you guys. So, I would love to meet you in person. That'd be a lot of fun.
Same from my end. If I have a flight to the U.S. Anywhere close, I'm gonna give you a bus, and then we can possibly have an IPA together. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Henrique, for organizing this episode once again. Caio, Pigato, João for coming in last minute just to say hi. Together with Conrado, thanks for creating this podcasting, and well, a big honor to have APG, the airline pilot guy, Captain Jeff, here with us. It's been fantastic. Un abrazo.
What he said.
He sent you a hug. So
Oh, good.
In Spanish.
but in Spanish, not in Portuguese.
Oh, well, are you allowed to do that?
Where did you get that Spanish
Yeah.
from?
It was just like that tiny joke, and I was like, oh, well, Latinos, we have that.
Linha Column 0 Gol 5625.